Over the years, I've seen my share of entitled individuals step into a courtroom, but nothing quite compared to the morning Alexandra Whitmore walked in. She arrived draped in luxury, wearing a dress worth more than most people earn in half a year. It wasn't just confidence she carried. It was a sharp, unmistakable arrogance that set the tone before she even said a word. And when she finally did speak, her tone was so dismissive, so steeped in contempt, I knew immediately this case would be one people wouldn't forget. What unfolded over the next 40 minutes would change her life and reinforce a simple truth. In my courtroom, wealth holds no power. The case file itself was clear. Alexandra Whitmore, age 24, faced charges of reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident and obstruction of justice. She had rear-ended a minivan at a red light, causing extensive damage. When the other driver stepped out to exchange information, Alexandra laughed, dismissed the vehicle as worthless, and drove away. The entire incident had been captured by traffic cameras, undeniable evidence. What complicated matters was her background. Alexandra was the daughter of Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies, a man worth billions. The Whitmore name was everywhere: charitable foundations, hospital boards, city buildings, and Alexandra carried herself as if that reputation granted her immunity. She showed up 20 minutes late, not fashionably but disrespectfully late. Her attorney hurried in ahead of her, apologizing profusely, while Alexandra followed at her own pace as though entering a luxury spa rather than a courtroom. Her heels echoed across the floor with deliberate rhythm. She carried a designer bag, kept her sunglasses on, and wore that immaculate cream silk dress. More statement than attire. I waited until she reached her table. "Miss Whitmore," I said, "thank you for joining us. I trust there was a valid reason for your delay." She removed her sunglasses slowly, almost theatrically. Traffic was bad. You know how it is. No apology. Just dismissal. Her attorney quickly stepped in with a formal apology, but my attention remained fixed on her. "This is a courtroom," I told her. "When you're scheduled for 9, I expect you at 9. Is that understood?" She gave a careless shrug. "Sure." Behind her, the gallery was full. Regular observers, a few reporters drawn by her last name, and in the third row, Maria Chen, the woman whose vehicle had been destroyed. Maria was a hospice nurse who worked long hours caring for others. That morning, she sat in her scrubs, having come straight from a night shift, watching the person responsible treat the entire situation like an inconvenience. I let silence linger as I reviewed the file again. When I looked up, Alexandra was checking her phone under the table. "Put the phone away." She glanced up, surprised. "I'm checking something important." "Nothing here is less important than these proceedings. Put it away." With a dramatic sigh, she dropped it into her purse. Her attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, if we could proceed, my client has another engagement this afternoon." Another engagement, as though this were just another item on her schedule. "Counselor," I replied, "your client is facing serious charges. Unless her next commitment is an emergency, she will remain here until this case is concluded." Alexandra leaned toward her attorney, whispering, but he tried to quiet her. She ignored him. "With all due respect," she said, "this is kind of ridiculous. It was just a minor accident. My insurance will handle it." A minor accident. Maria's vehicle had been totaled. Her children had been terrified. She had missed work trying to deal with the aftermath. "Let me be clear," I said, my tone sharpening. "You struck another vehicle, caused significant damage, and then fled the scene. And you consider this trivial?" "Accidents happen," she replied casually. Her attorney looked as though he wished he could disappear. I turned to the monitor. "Let's review the footage." The video played clear, undeniable. Alexandra's car hitting the minivan, Maria stepping out in distress, checking on her children. Then Alexandra exiting her vehicle, making a dismissive remark, returning to her car, and driving away, running a red light in the process. When the video ended, the room was silent. "Do you recall what you said that day?" I asked. "Not really," she replied. "I was stressed. The recording suggests you called her car worthless." She gave a faint smirk. "Well, it kind of was." A collective gasp filled the room. Even her attorney buried his face in his hands. That was the moment I understood exactly where this was heading. I stood from the bench. "Miss Whitmore," I said, "you've just watched yourself flee an accident involving children. And your response is to insult the victim's vehicle. Is that correct?" "I didn't mean it like that." "Then explain." "My car is nicer." Obviously, the damage to hers would be cheaper. The reasoning was so detached from reality, I had to pause. So, because your car is more valuable, the damage matters less, basically. Her attorney rose. Your Honor, may I? Sit down. Your client is speaking clearly enough. I turned back to her. Walk me through your thinking. I was late, she said dismissively. I tried to stop, hit the gas by mistake. It was an accident, and when you saw children in the car, I checked. They seemed fine. Kids cry over everything. Maria made a quiet sound from the gallery. Those children were terrified, I said. That's not my fault, Alexandra shot back. Their mom probably made them scared. The courtroom erupted. It took effort to restore order. You're blaming a mother, I said evenly, for her children's fear after you hit them and left. Kids follow their parents' reactions, she insisted. I had seen many defendants over the years, some remorseful, some regretful, but Alexandra showed none of it. After leaving the scene, I continued, you went to your country club, had lunch, and played golf. You didn't report the incident for 3 days. Is that accurate? I needed time, while the victim struggled to manage her life without transportation. That's what insurance is for, which you failed to contact. I was busy. With what? My life doesn't stop because of a dented car. I glanced at her driving record. Multiple violations, a clear pattern. This is not your first offense. Everyone speeds. Not everyone leaves accident scenes. I didn't run, I left. The wordplay changed nothing. My father's lawyer said this would be dismissed, she added. There it was. I don't care who your father is, I said. He is not here. I am. Her confidence faltered. In this courtroom, you are not your last name, I reviewed the sentencing guidelines. Given the circumstances, children involved, repeated behavior, lack of remorse, the penalties increase. You can't be serious, she said. I am entirely serious. Before delivering the sentence, I read Maria Chen's statement aloud. Her words described the fear, the financial strain, the trauma her children endured, and the simple truth that Alexandra had looked at them and driven away. When I finished, I looked directly at Alexandra. That is who you were that day. I didn't know they were scared, she whispered. You didn't stay long enough to know. I delivered the verdict. Guilty. Then the sentence, 60 days in county, no alternatives. 1 year, license suspension. 200 hours of community service at the hospital where Miss Chen works. Full restitution for damages, medical costs, lost income and therapy, and attendance at a victim impact panel. She broke down, but not from remorse, only from the realization that consequences were real. You said your time was important, I told her. Let me tell you what matters, those children, their fear, their mother's hardship. I brought the gavel down. Take her into custody. As she was led away, she turned to her father, pleading. He stood, his voice heavy with disappointment. You did this to yourself. Afterward, I invited Maria Chen to speak. She stood with quiet strength. My children needed to see that fairness exists, she said. That money doesn't excuse harm. Her words carried weight beyond the courtroom. Later, her father returned, not to intervene, but to take responsibility for how his daughter had been raised. He offered support for Maria's children, not as a transaction, but as an act of accountability. In the months that followed, Alexandra served her sentence fully. At first, she resisted, but slowly, something changed. Through her community service, she faced the reality she had once ignored. Maria, with remarkable grace, spoke to her, not with anger, but with honesty. Eventually, Alexandra chose to continue volunteering. She wrote a sincere apology to the children. Her father established a fund to support their future. 6 months later, Alexandra returned, not as a defendant but as someone changed. I thought you were unfair, she said. Now I know you saved me. I shook my head. You saved yourself. She told me she was pursuing nursing, seeking purpose beyond privilege. That is what justice looks like. Not punishment alone, but transformation. Maria's children began to heal. Alexandra learned accountability. And a young girl named Emma discovered something essential, that fairness still exists. That is why I sit on this bench, not simply to punish, but to teach, to correct, and to ensure that accountability applies to everyone equally. Alexandra Whitmore entered believing wealth could shield her from consequences. She left understanding that character is not bought. It is built by facing the truth of one's actions. And Maria Chen's children learned something just as important. Justice belongs to everyone.